We're going to be talking about security blind spots for application security and email today. With me on the call, as you mentioned, is Motti Elloul. He's our VP of Customer Success and Incident Response. My name is David Leone. I'm a senior CSM here at Perception Point. We wanted to talk today about some of the new things that we're seeing in the world, especially with work from home, right? So the need to communicate, everybody working remotely, there's all these new apps being welcomed into the environments, whether it's Teams, Slack, ways to share messages since people are in the office, so external file sharing applications, Sharepoint, CRMs, all that fun stuff. And now we're seeing attacks come in any form. It used to be just, oh, somebody emailed me something, it was a malicious file, and that was the end of it. You would run your antivirus, you would block it with an email gateway, try to mitigate those attacks. Now we're seeing things where, as we just saw in the last presentation, there are links that redirect, or they redirect 10 times to malicious sites that are then being spoofing some other notable website, like a fake Microsoft site. And we're seeing even plain text business email compromise attacks now, where there's absolutely no payload at all. There's no links to follow. It's just somebody pretending to be someone like a manager that works at the organization, and it's kind of spoofing those attacks from an external email address or a similar looking email attack. In fact, we did a survey with 1,000 IT decision makers, and you can see here 72% of those attacks for their breaches originated from email, and then the rest came from cloud collaboration channels. And when we say collaboration channels, we're talking about things like a Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. And then we're going to talk about some 3 real-life case studies after we go into the technology and discuss some of the gaps and build upon what Roger was talking about. So our mission is to prevent any content-based attack shared with your environment. It includes files, links, plain text across any collaboration channel and email. And like a big partner of ours, for example, is Amazon S3. So we'll be talking about that a little bit as well in a minute. And so, as some of you may have experienced personally, cyber attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated. So we need to be able to protect against all these different channels. So I don't know about your organizations, but a lot of the organizations we deal with have introduced a ton of new applications into their environment. Some have even built their own homegrown applications. And this is where we aim to fill that gap. So traditionally, email was your big way in. Now, files can be shared across Sharepoint sites that are open and shared between multiple organizations and partner organizations. And even homegrown applications can leverage our APIs to scan that content and make sure it's safe. One thing I do like to point out, because we're really proud of it, is the SE Labs seal in the top corner there. SE Labs, for those who don't know, is an independent tester for things like different security products, email gateways, and a number of other areas in cybersecurity. Every year they pit things against each other, kind of in line with the Gartner quadrants. We came out #1 last year, and we're waiting on the results for the most recent test, but we did rank #1 with a 94% detection rate and the lowest false positive rate. So that's pretty neat, just something we like to share. To give you an idea of some of the various channels here, you could see we could protect against the more traditional. We can do on-prem email. We can also do 365, G Suite, and then some collaboration channels. So if you have any questions, if you're using any of these things in your environment, or if you have any homegrown applications, please throw your questions in as you think of them. I'm going to work through. Motti will try to answer your questions as we're going. And then at the end, we'll be happy to answer anything verbally that we can answer if there's time left. So how do we prevent these kinds of attacks? So Perception Point takes 7 different engines and combines those to give you 100% visibility of the content that's entering your environment. So in a typical installation, for example, on 365, we'll sit right in line. So you don't change your MX records. Nobody knows what you're using. And the messages will route through our system. When they route into Perception Point through a secure connector, they go through multiple spam engines to identify things that are spam versus malicious. From there, it goes into the recursive unpacker. And the recursive unpacker is the piece that dives into the email and takes it apart. So whether that's a zip file where there's multiple zip files nested inside, or some sort of obfuscation technique where there's a bogus URL that redirects multiple times and ultimately lands on a fake site. We can then examine the fake site and look for other information on the site to tell that that is a fake URL. So that would happen under the phishing engine. The phishing engine uses machine learning to look at image recognition. So if there's a Microsoft logo on the site, for example, and as Roger mentioned, maybe it's m1crosoft.com or a similar typo name, you can detect that. We can tell that the images on the website don't match the domains. For threat intelligence, that's leveraging our global threat intelligence, our incident response team, as well as partnerships we have with other intelligence agencies. We have a static file analysis, which is something you would expect to see in pretty much any product. So, kind of virus totals and your AV engines. And then one of my favorite pieces of the puzzle is our BEC and impersonation engine. That's really cool because that's looking at the context of an email. So if there's a plain text email coming in, it's talking about finance, it's referencing somebody that works at the company, but it's not from the formal domain of the company, and could be talking about sense of urgency. We could talk about finance, anything where they're requesting information and using someone's name. We're able to mark that as malicious and block that from entering the organization because there are a lot of breaches now that are coming from just having conversations, social engineering through email. The last thing you see on the screen there, what's called the HAP, is our hardware assisted platform. And it's a sandbox, but it's the next generation of a sandbox. And what's super cool about the way that this works is we actually take apart a payload. So normal sandbox, if you run something through it, it takes like 15, 20 minutes to get a result. So a lot of products out there don't run 100% of the content through the sandbox because it takes too long to process. The way that the HAP works is we look at the assembly language memory maps, and we look at the process threads to see if it's calling out of memory. So whatever we're detonating, is it doing something abnormal? If it's launching Word, is it then dropping files? Is it overloading the memory? Is it doing something? That allows us to catch any end days or 0 days that might not exist in the standard static analysis. So we can dynamically scan for new things and new threats on 100% of the items because of the speed at which we're able to scan at. Most things scan in about 30 seconds to 45 seconds. So we're able to run everything through that HAP. And because of the increase in Mac usage, we also support Mac hardware and Mac file extensions in the HAP. Beyond that, we have 24/7 incident response. So one of the big advantages at Perception Point is our unique incident response service that works with you hand in hand at no additional cost. So this is a tailored service that handles every aspect of your inbound channel traffic and makes sure that your system is always fully optimized based on the new and unseen attacks. So this is something that can save your IT and SOC teams a tremendous amount of time and eliminates a lot of heavy lifting related to like false positives or having to manage traditional email gateways, because most of the stuff will be auto-approved based on its confidence level. But there's like a 10 to 15% of emails in a gray area where it may be a new sender, but legitimate. It may have a certain amount of suspicion to it. Those automatically go into a queue and they're reviewed in just a couple of minutes by hand from the incident response team. If it's a false positive, it's then sent right to the user's inbox. It's transparent. There's no need to open up a ticket with your SOC team and have somebody release an email or anything like that. And we're also able to identify new threats and then update our rules and threat intelligence as we see these new attacks and campaigns unfold. So next, I want to give you a couple real life examples, just 3 of them. I don't want to kill you with slides here, but just to show this in action and how we're able to protect from multiple areas here. This first customer it's a gig site. So they hook up people that have certain services and skill sets with people that are looking to pay for those services. It's a $3.5 billion company. And what they found was if I tried to hire you on the site, I could be an attacker. I could then send you malicious files. So they had an issue where the payee was sending malicious files instead of files related to the job that they wanted to hire them for. They met with us. We've implemented it. They use S3 buckets to store those files. Now, when a new file comes in, it automatically gets triggered to go through perception point as the user uploads it. If the file is deemed malicious, we automatically remove the file and it disappears, and then it doesn't affect the user anymore. I pulled some metrics recently from their environment, and you can see that last month, this was in December, so it's actually a pretty slow month for them. They had 1.7 million items scanned, and there were 1,500 malicious items that were sent to users. So obviously, in this case, if it's not safe to use the platform, nobody's going to pay. They get a cut of every sale. They go out of business. So this is a huge savings for the company and their users and their reputation. The next one is a really large company. I would bet that most of you, if you turn your head, there's something near you that was produced by this company. They are a huge global name. They have almost 100,000 employees worldwide and a $400 billion market cap. And when COVID hit, they realized that they had to work remotely. And that's an awful lot of people to have remote. So they are using SharePoint internally to share files, but they also have shared SharePoint sites with vendors and partners and other organizations. Now, policing those endpoints is almost impossible. The odds of 100,000 people being perfect all the time and remembering their cyber education and not clicking on anything or sharing anything they're not supposed to and not being compromised with an account takeover is very low. And they were realistic about that. So when they approached us, we implemented our SharePoint collaboration channel integration with them. And now anything that is uploaded into their SharePoint, anything that's updated in their SharePoint, anything on shared SharePoint sites that gets updated or added to goes through the same scanning process, gets scanned, and then if it's malicious, it is then removed. As you can see, I pulled the metrics for them for just 1 week. There was almost 2.2 million items scanned, and 48 of those items were malicious. Now, for 100,000 people, 48 is a pretty small number, but when you think about it, that's 48 potentially malicious. It could be ransomware, it could be cryptoware, times every single person that has access to that site, both within their organization and any of the organizations that they are sharing sites with. So in this way, we're able to help both protect their reputation and their brand, especially with such a large company. It would definitely be on the news if there was any sort of issue, as well as lose a lot of consumer trust. So in this instance, it's very transparent, it's super fast, and we're able to provide that without any education to the users. Because everything is transparent, there's no education. So for 100,000 people to be able to implement something very quickly in a matter of minutes and not have to educate is a big win for them. The last case study is a little bit more generic. These are stories that I've heard. I've been with the company about 4 months now, and just in the 4 months, these are a lot of the reasons that we've had calls with customers in the first place when using us for email. So we've had companies where a BEC attack was sent out, managers asked them to send gift cards, and then someone mailed gift cards to what they thought was their manager's personal Gmail account, and turns out there was just a spoof. We've had people pay fake invoices. We've had people respond to, reset your Microsoft 365 password here, your password's about to expire, and then had their email and password compromised, and then their whole account taken over, and then a hacker entered the organization. And the obvious stuff for this is like fines, penalties. It depends on your vertical too, though. For certain verticals, these penalties are much more substantial. If this happens in a healthcare environment, nuclear environment, a government environment, these penalties are substantial. And then, of course, you have the normal brand reputation damage, loss of business, loss of customer trust, that kind of stuff. So again, I thought it would be nice to look at a few metrics here. So I pulled the metrics for 1 week. This was the first week of January. So it's actually, again, it's pretty late scan time because a lot of people are on vacation. But just pulling from various regions, we had 21 million items scanned, 120,000 malicious items found in there, and almost 2 million items, about 10%, being marked and directed to spam. So there is an awful lot of stuff going around, even in the slowest times. So to answer the question that started the whole point of this, how do we eliminate these security blind spots with these new introduction of collaboration channels into these environments and these work from home environments? So obviously, it needs to be easy to use. If whatever solution you need, if it's not easy to use, you might use it wrong, it doesn't work as well. It does need to cover 100% of your attack surface. If you're leaving a door open somewhere, someone's going to find it. It needs to be able to do a good job at what it's doing. So the 0-day detection, the end-day detection, the human element that we add to our intelligence as well. Speed and scalability is another thing that I think is worth mentioning. We are built entirely across AWS cloud platform, so we're able to scale with workloads without reducing the time that you receive your emails. And I think that's something that's really important. I know in the past, I've been an engineer for 7-8 years, and I manage secure email gateways, and you just run into issues. You get bogged down, you have to add more hardware. There's just a lot of complication to a more traditional approach that is not an issue with some newer platforms. The integrated incident response team is on here because we're here 24/7. So if you're working at night, you're alone on the night shift, and you have an issue, we're here to help clear all that up. We can revoke any emails that need to be revoked. We can block senders. We can do whatever we need to do to help you get the job done. And then lastly, one-click deployment. A lot of the collaboration channels, for example, it's just a matter of clicking activate and approving some permissions, and you're done. So that is not maybe a necessity, but it's certainly nice to have. So in summary, the need to communicate across all these channels is introducing a lot of attack surface, and it's something that we're aiming to reduce, both with traditional channels and via our API for your homegrown applications. If anyone has additional questions, if you'd like to set up a demo and just take a look at it, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. My email address is here, david.leone@perception-point.io. You can also join me on LinkedIn, David and Leone on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Last thing I'd like to invite you to, don't blame me, blame the marketing, but we have a wonderful little Valentine's Day themed webinar coming up with David Duncan from Redpoint Cyber. David's super smart. I worked with him onboarding when they joined Perception Point as a partner. They're very smart guys. It's definitely worth taking a look at. And with that, if there's any questions that are unanswered, I'm more than happy to answer those if Motti hasn't gotten them via the chat here.